to share with you a fascinating insight that I saw in this week's parsha based on a comment by Rabbi Riskin. The beginning of this week's parsha offers the directive by which a person brings the first fruits to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, within the confines of the temple, and he offers them to the Kohen, the high priests, or the priests who are working within the confines of the temple, unable to look after their livelihood, and these bikurim, these first fruits from one's fields, serve as a present, a gift, an offering for the Kohanim to be able to consume. Immediately afterwards, the Torah tells us about the mitzvah of the tithe, when a person has a portion of his teruah, of his grain, of his food, that he offers to the Leviim, to the Levites, who also serve God within the confines of the temple, and might not necessarily be able to look after their own livelihood. One offers them a tithe, a portion, a tzedakah, an act of charity to these Levites for their service within the temple as well. And finally, the tithe, the offering that is also given and contributed to someone who might be an orphan or an almanah, a widow, that also find themselves in a state of destitution where they cannot necessarily provide for their families or themselves for that matter. And therefore, once again, the Torah reminds us to give this portion for them from our own parnas, our own livelihood, our own crops. We offer them this portion to help sustain them as well. And finally, at the end of all of these mitzvot, the Torah sums up the words that we say, that we proclaim in the confines of the temple, and we explain, Lo avarti mimitzvotecha, I did not surpass, I followed all of the directives, the guidelines, all of the particulars that God has spelled out for me in order to keep these commandments. V'lo shachachti mimenu, and I did not forget these mitzvot. I did not forget to perform these commandments. And the question is rather obvious. If a person just performed the mitzvot, and he just gave the offering to the Kohanim, to the Leviim, the Levites, the Atom, the orphan, the almanah, the widow, then obviously he did not forget. What is this proclamation? What are we saying when we state that we did not forget? What did we not forget? We just performed the mitzvah. It's obvious that we remembered to do it. And Rabbi Riskin says a tremendous insight. He says that this proclamation that we did not forget actually refers to last week's Torah portion. At the very end of last week's Torah portion, the Torah tells us about the nation of Amalek. Amalek is our sworn enemy, and they greeted us immediately when we left our exodus from Egypt, when we left our slavery or our enslavement in Egypt. They were the first to greet us, and they tried to destroy us. Amalek is a nation that subscribes to brute force, to physical might. They do not subscribe to kindness, to sensitivity, to awareness, to charity. And they subscribe to a God, so to speak, that exhibits himself, or that they believed exhibits himself, through brute force, through physical might. They try to destroy us as such. And therefore the Torah reminds us, Lo tishkach, don't forget what Amalek tried to do. They tried to destroy us physically, but they also try to uproot us spiritually. They fight us. They are reprehensible. They are derogatory. They degrade everything that we stand for. They are a nation that subscribes to brutality. We are a nation that subscribes to charity. They are a nation that believe in physicality. We are a nation that subscribe and believe in a God of spirituality, a God of kindness, a God that bases and premises himself upon nurturing a nation of moral fibers, of moral consistency, of understanding, compassion, kindness, and charity. And therefore, in this week's parsha, immediately after the war that we engaged, or remembering that nation of Amalek that tried to destroy us externally, we are reminded to perform mitzvot, commandments of charity, kindness, to the Kohen, the priest, to the Levites, to the Atom, to the destitute, the person who is an ani, a person who is poor and cannot look after his family. We give from our own in order to help sustain them. We demonstrate as such that we are a charitable people, that we are a kind people. And when we say lo shachachti, we did not forget, what we're actually proclaiming is we do not forget who we are. We are different than Amalek. Amalek subscribe to that, we subscribe to this. We subscribe to morality and kindness, compassion and empathy to our brethren and to the people around us and to the world at large. The moment that we forget that compassion, that we forget who we are and giving that charity, is the moment that we no longer have the right to exist, and that we forget what the Jewish nation is premised upon. And therefore, that proclamation of Lo Shachachti, we did not forget, refers back to not forgetting the difference between us and Amalek externally in last week's parsha, and not forgetting the difference between us and Amalek internally in this week's parsha. This past week, our daughter celebrated her birthday. She was very, very close to Gila. She was closest in age to Gila. And she decided on her birthday that what she would do to celebrate her birthday, she invited two girls who were very good friends of Gila from school, from Ginat Eden, the school that offers help for girls or for youngsters who do not necessarily have self-security, who might not necessarily be cushioned with a proper family support, and who need to build themselves based on kindness and understanding and compassion. And that kindness and that sensitivity hopefully builds their character once again. Well, Nechama, our daughter, decided to celebrate her birthday by inviting two of these girlfriends of Gila, who knew Gila well when she was alive, Rahman al-Atzlan, and she invited them to partake from her birthday, to celebrate with her. They went to the beach together, they enjoyed their time together, and then she brought them to her home and made dinner for them, and they ate together, and they enjoyed reflecting upon Gila as well. What Nechama decided to do on her birthday was to demonstrate Lo Shachachti. I did not forget who we are. I did not forget what I've learned from my sister Gila, what I've learned from Judaism at large, that we are a compassionate, a kind, sensitive, and charitable people. And that's exactly what she demonstrated on that day of her birthday. She demonstrated that Gila herself was the kind of person who lo tishkach, she did not forget others. She did not forget what it meant to look after others and to be compassionate and understanding to others. And she demonstrated that even though Gila is gone and not with us, lo shachachti, I have not forgotten who that person was. I have not forgotten the morals and the foundations that I have to embrace in order to demonstrate what it means to be Jewish. And this was how she celebrated her birthday. This, indeed, is what the Torah reveals to us in this week's parsha is the Torah way, is the Jewish way. And as long as we embrace these morals, these guidelines, this compassion, this understanding, and this kindness, and we demonstrate that we do not forget it, but that we always remember it, that we remember that this is the Gila way. Shabbat Shalom.